We got Russell Baxter hanging on the phone. He from NFL Spin Zone, also contributed to the NFL Network Good Morning Football. Russell, how you doing today?
I'm good, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing well, although I'm a little disappointed that the season seems to have flown by so quickly.
It always says that. You tell people, you warn people, you do shows during the August, and then I always leave them with something like, and before you know it, it'll be week 6 or week 7. Well, it's week 17. And now for all those, I'll be polite, those people who love to throw out the phrase if the season ended today and give you playoff ramifications that make absolutely no sense, you will get your wish tomorrow.
Well, tomorrow's got enough scenarios to make anybody crazy. So, but before we get into that, I want to ask you, a couple of things about the season kind of in review. So, looking over the season, what team surprised you the most this year?
I think I'm surprised that Dallas has 13 wins. I thought they would be better. I thought they had the right formula. I think Atlanta is a big surprise because their defensive issues, they managed to overcome them by a team that scored over 500 points, only the 20th time we've seen a team do that in the history of the league. Now, does that add up to Super Bowl success? Not necessarily, but it's a team that last year looked like they were fading on offense and didn't have much of a defense. Matt Ryan certainly in the running for comeback player of the year. I think I wasn't shocked that Tampa Bay made a run. They've had this habit of growing and then kind of fading down the stretch. I think Tennessee's a little bit of a surprise. I know things didn't go well for them last week, but when you win 5 games in 2 years and then 8 games in 16 weeks, there's a lot to be said for that. And we finally saw Miami. They teased us on and off the last couple of years, and when they got off to the 1-4 start, Josh, it looked like disaster again. But winners of 9 of 10, we'll see what happens against New England. It's a place that New England hasn't played well the last 3 years. So we've had a roller coaster season. It's really been a season of streaks. I wrote a piece recently about that. Pittsburgh 4-5 wins 6 in a row. The Giants are 2-3. They win 6 in a row. Miami's 1-4. I think they win 6 in a row, and now they've won 3 in a row. And the bad teams as well. Minnesota's 5-0 and then goes 5-4, and now they're 7-8. So it's been an up and down streaky season, and I think that's why, even though New England looks like New England and Dallas looks much improved, I still think this is very wide open.
Who is your NFL MVP? Because there's a lot of argument for a lot of different guys. I know people keep bringing up the 2 guys in Dallas, but to me, I think they end up canceling each other out, and I think it comes down to either Tom Brady, Matt Stafford, or Aaron Rodgers. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I keep on hearing this thing about canceling each other out. I mean, there's 50 votes when it comes to the Associated Press NFL MVP. I think the MVP of the league is Ezekiel Elliott. And I know running backs don't often win, although just 4 years ago we saw Adrian Peterson capture that. Dak Prescott does not develop the way he has developed without Ezekiel Elliott. Okay, you got to put the chicken before the egg here. And Ezekiel Elliott, with probably the exception of the first game, has been a force all year. And slowly but surely, Dak got more and more comfortable. So, to me, it's going to be the more intriguing battle is who's going to be Rookie of the Year than almost NFL MVP. I mean, Brady, Rodgers. I'll be curious to see if the voters hold the suspension against Brady, and not so much that, but you also got to take into account he's already played 12 games opposed to guys who played 11 games, 15 games. It all even itself out. So it's actually kind of nice to see the race kind of wide open. Aaron Rodgers is a guy who played okay early and then got hot. Matt Ryan's been pretty steady. But my choice is Ezekiel Elliott because he changed what the Dallas Cowboys were and reverted them back to what they were 2 years ago. And a lot of people are like, well, DeMarco Murray wasn't NFL MVP that year. Well, a lot of that had to do with the fact that, A, Aaron Rodgers had an off-the-charts kind of year, and B, J.J. Watt was in the running that year. And by the way, DeMarco Murray won Offensive Player of the Year that year, leading the league in rushing. I think Ezekiel Elliott has changed the fortunes of the Cowboys this year because it's not that he just has a good offensive line. He gets through the offensive line. He's a playmaker. He's a guy who punishes linebackers and safeties. I mean, you would have to really be anti-Dallas to ignore what he has done for that team this year.
What about Defensive Player of the Year? The first half of the season, it looked like Von Miller was on his way to possibly win that. But then the second half of the season, you've seen Khalil Mack and Landon Collins really come on.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And I'll tell you, Landon Collins has been a guy I've really kept an eye on. The Giants, I still think, have a better pass rush, Josh, but they don't have a great pass rush. And without Jason Pierre-Paul, it's certainly diminished. But between him and Janoris Jenkins, they've really been the strength of their defense, almost like Seattle, where Seattle's got a decent pass rush and at times very overpowering, but you can't ignore what their entire secondary has done. So, yeah, I mean, I think Khalil Mack has been pretty steady for the last 2.5 months. Von Miller, right up there, leading the league in sacks as well. We don't have somebody who is like, Marcus Peters or anybody with 10 interceptions. I think I would slight lean Khalil Mack as far as who's going to win it, but I think Landon Collins will give him some competition.
Looking ahead to NFL Week 17, Russell, you have a situation where you have all these crazy scenarios, and of course half of it doesn't matter because if the Packers and Lions tie, NFL conspiracy alert, they could just, both get in the playoffs right there. But looking at Week 17, what are some of the scenarios that intrigue you the most when it comes to the playoff outcomes?
Well, first, I got to get a word on what you said. NFL conspiracy alert. Are you saying the NFL wants a third tie?
I'm not saying the NFL wants it. I'm just saying that it would be pretty funny if the Lions and Packers did have a gentleman's agreement just to tie the game.
Those two teams hate each other, Josh.
I know, but it would be pretty funny.
Okay. I mean, listen. I mean, did you get tinfoil for Christmas for your head? Let's not get carried away. The Detroit Lions haven't won a division since 1993. If you don't think they're serious about winning it, I can't help you there.
No, I was saying it tongue in cheek, but
well, okay.
I just thought.
I think there's some foil on your tongue. So I'll just say this, okay? This is what's going to be interesting about Sunday night. What's going to be interesting is, what if Washington loses to the Giants, which is entirely possible. I know the game's in Washington. It's a place that Carolina won there a couple of weeks ago. If Washington wins, both Detroit and Green Bay are in. Okay? Mm-hmm. So that eliminates them, their gentleman's agreement. Of course, you still want to win the division so you can host a playoff game. And by the way, Tampa Bay is still alive as well, but I think they need Clemson and Washington to win today for them to get in. So, and by the way, in the AFC, it's pretty simple. We already know the 6 playoff teams. We already know Houston's a 4 and Pittsburgh's a 3, and either New England, Oakland, or Kansas City is going to be the ones in the 2. So we'll see. Aaron Rodgers has kind of owned the Lions. Last year he won in Detroit. The Hail Marys won there before. Detroit's defense scares me a little, but Green Bay's defense, I would say if there's going to be a tie in Detroit Sunday night, it's going to be 41-41. Let's put it this way. It's going to be an expensive tie. I get the feeling the Redskins are going to lose tomorrow at home to the Giants. Their defense is Josh, this is the kind of consistency you don't want in the league. Last year, the Giants' defense was 28th overall, 26th against the run, and 25th against the pass. This year, the Redskins' defense. That was the Redskins' defense. This year's the Redskins' defense is 29th overall, 25th against the run, 28th against the pass. Okay, I mean, those are great bingo numbers, but that's not going to get it done. And when you don't have a defense that you can rely on and bounce back with, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. I think the Giants are going to knock them off. Detroit and Green Bay will then play for the division, but both will be in the playoffs.
look, speaking of the Lions real quick, I feel like Matt Stafford doesn't get enough credit for what he's done for this Lions team this year. And you could argue that he pretty much has not just saved Jim Caldwell's job, but has totally elevated that team in a way that really kind of vindicates the fact that he was a number one overall pick. People thought, he was injured, he didn't fully play well, and then he had a couple good seasons, then he had a down year. Then people thought, well, without Calvin Johnson, can he be any good? And you could argue this may have been Stafford's best season in the NFL.
Yeah, listen, they've been the king of the fourth quarter comeback, and yes, he doesn't get enough credit because the Lions haven't won a divisional title since 1993, which is not his fault. But unfortunately, in this day and age, what we kind of do, not all of us, we seem to want to just pinpoint to the quarterback. The Lions have given up 29 touchdown passes in 15 games this year. Okay? They gave up a touchdown pass last week to Des Bryant. Not a touchdown reception to Des Bryant.
Right, a passing touchdown.
To Des Bryant, to Jason Witten. Okay? So they've got some issues in the secondary, and Aaron Rodgers in the passing attack has lit it up. Now, neither one of these teams has much of a running game. The Packers were banged up in the secondary. Getting Demarius Randall back a couple of weeks ago has certainly helped. We'll see what happens with Darius Slay with Detroit. He might have already been ruled out. I'm really not sure. But Green Bay's got a lot of momentum, and I see them winning tomorrow night, but I also see Detroit getting into the playoffs, and hopefully they can win a playoff game. Remember, this franchise hasn't won a playoff game, Josh, since 1991 when Eric Kramer was the quarterback.
I remember those playoffs when I was younger because of Barry Sanders going nuts in that one game. He basically carried them to that playoff win.
Yeah, and if you remember their last playoff win, which was a 38-6 win over the Dallas Cowboys, Barry Sanders was basically a decoy in that game. And it was Eric Kramer throwing the ball all over the place to Herman Moore and Brett Curryman, et cetera, et cetera. Again, Barry Sanders gets all the blame for not winning the playoff game, too. We kind of just pick and choose who we want to blame for losses.
Yeah, Russell, isn't it funny? Isn't it funny that we tend to want to blame one guy, yet we forget there's 11 players on each side of the ball?
Well, we forget there's 53 guys on the field. If we don't blame the coach, we blame the quarterback. If we don't blame the quarterback, we blame the coach. I hear people in our business say, well, Aaron Rodgers beat Tom Brady. What is this, MMA? Aaron Rodgers is 13-2. What are you, Sandy Koufax?
Yeah, I didn't know Aaron Rodgers was a pass rusher.
Here's what I find about people who do that, okay? And I'm sure your listeners can figure out who I'm talking about. These are the people who think the shows they're on and the things they do are all about them. So if they're on a show and if something goes wrong technically or they make a factual error, it's not on them. They'll blame somebody else, okay? Because it's all about them. But except when it comes to I've never understood taking the approach of a team game by boiling it down to one person, because anybody in their right mind who watches a football game and doesn't watch everything else that's going on around and just watches the quarterback doesn't know how to watch football. Sorry.
You have nothing to be sorry about to me. I totally agree with you. We're talking to Russell Baxter here. He's from NFL Spin Zone. He's also a contributor on the NFL Network's Good Morning Football here on 97.3 ESPN. Looking ahead to the playoffs, Russell, we know the teams that have already clinched, and one of them is the Raiders. And before Derek Carr got injured, that seemed like a team that could beat almost anybody. They seemed fearless. But now with Matt McGloin at quarterback, it kind of does bring a damper on that season for them. Is there a team now that could beat the Patriots in the playoffs?
Well, I think you have to look at Kansas City and you have to look at Pittsburgh. Kansas City got a shot at them last year in the postseason, played okay, but not great. Pittsburgh played New England earlier this season without Ben Roethlisberger. Moved the ball against them, even with Landry Jones, a lot of that with Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell is the most intriguing player, I think, in the AFC going into this playoffs. They've really run him a lot. He has a ton of – he's, I think, second in the league in rushing and third in the league in total yards from scrimmage, and he missed the first 3 games of the season. So keeping that defense off the field, controlling the football. This has been more Le'Veon Bell's show than Ben Roethlisberger's show with the Steelers for the last 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm. And then on the NFC side, we know the Cowboys are the number 1 seed. Who is the team that you look at? Is it just the Giants, or is there another team that making the playoffs that you look at and say that team could give Dallas problems?
I think Atlanta could give Dallas problems. A couple of Vic Beasley sacks. Their defense isn't that great. I totally understand that. But what if Dallas is down 21-10? Because Atlanta is certainly capable of doing that to anybody. But, I don't know if Green Bay's in yet, so I don't want to say Green Bay, but Green Bay got stomped in their own building earlier this year. I know it's a different Green Bay team, but still offensive line versus defensive line. So I would say Atlanta. Seattle is the mystery team of the league. And my preseason Super Bowl pick was Houston over Seattle. Okay? Now, I know people might scoff at that, but here's what I know. They're both in the playoffs. Arizona isn't, Carolina isn't, and Denver isn't. Okay? So for what it's worth, it's still alive. But Seattle, mystifying. Okay? It looked like a home and away thing, and then last week they couldn't kick an extra point, and they wind up losing at home to the Cardinals.
Yeah, listen, at least both of your teams are making the playoffs. My preseason Super Bowl pick was the Patriots and the Cardinals. Look how well I did. So,
well, Josh, listen, what you have to do is adopt my philosophy when it comes to somebody coming up to you and saying, Russell, who do you think's going to the Super Bowl this year? And I have the same answer every year. Me.
Perfect answer on that note. That's a perfect way to end here. Russell, I always appreciate you coming on. I always appreciate the insights you have. Happy New Year. I hope you enjoy the NFL games tomorrow.
Absolutely. Enjoy it. Happy New Year to everybody listening out there as well. And sound words by my father. If you're driving tomorrow, make sure you have a car.
Thanks, Russell.
Have a good day.
Take care, my friend.